So this actually works very nicely, and we have a nice, completely legal sequence. And I also want to say that just like the issue, after the pilot, you might look at it and say, well, I want to change it up a little bit because we haven't done it yet. Nothing's wrong with that. Okay, so I use this as the producer, I'm called. I use this when we play. We are not doing that though because we are playing the pilot.
Don't I need something more? I guess in my characters, I only have the father of a child and abilities good at math and physics. Don't I need something more?
You need either another person or another trait.
I'm thinking, does it need to be a trait that is useful in advantage? Well, this can be useful actually. Wait, did somebody had painting or writing?
No. Go
No?
right ahead.
Yeah, then we can take sketches and draws. He's good
okay.
at
Yeah,
drawing.
that makes sense. Yeah.
So he can make his own. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So now just to clarify all the really depressing things for some reason. Trust for Nia, imposter complex for Gerard, self-worth for Sam, and for Mark. What did you say the issue was? Was it loneliness or solitude or?
He was afraid of conflict.
Oh, right.
So he's very personal, alone, and conflicts. Well, I run away. I'm not going to
conflict averse. Yes, I see. Okay.
Oh.
Right. Now remember that although we are sometimes phrasing these as psychological conditions, these are more like story themes to find out about your character under pressure. For example, you might respond very positively one day instead of badly. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right. That's very important. You don't have to act out these things exactly in their most negative way. This is your character's issue, not their flaw.
Yes.
Right. So we can see your character respond in any way about them, depending on the situation. So that's kind of fun. It's more positive, right? That way they're not just depressed.
Yes.
So, okay, so that's great. I'm going to begin our pilot. Here's a little time travel visitation. I'm swooping in from the future about a week and a half later because we went and played the pilot right away. And I'm hopping in to talk a little bit about that preparation phase that, with any luck, you just witnessed. This is because I'm motivated to showcase the game and the way it's played. So I went ahead and named it after we played the pilot, which is what you've seen in these intros of the lower decks. So we played the pilot without knowing a name for the show yet, and that popped into mind afterward. So what happened about this preparation? What are we looking at? There are a few things. The first is to acknowledge something that is only evident in that it is edited out. So there's a blink, but no knowledge of the way that one player added more content after the suggestion was made about the working class context on an industrial spaceship, and then the discussion of adding some exploration of the unknown. And then one player suggested the concept of amnesia, that, waking up and not knowing where you are and so forth. Now, that put me in kind of an interesting position. The entire Monday Lab boiling pitch was based on how a group discussion of what we're going to do is often a fiasco, and not in the good way. That one thing one can do is actually just go full bore game master and say, we're doing this. And there just isn't, a chat session about what we're going to do. And in this case, obviously I hadn't done that and didn't really want to. Yet, I also am very, very sensitive to this whole idea of what about, and if, oh, but if, and it just kind of really sprawls. And it just so happens that there is sort of a rubric to go by, which is that if you hear a specific thing that you hate, say, I hate that. And we're not going to have that in there. Thank you for suggesting it, but no. And arguably, anybody can and should do that. Now, in this case, that happened to be me. I despise these stories about, waking up and who are we and what is going on. And also at that moment, there seemed to me to be the impending doom of whatabouts. It seems to me that we had enough to go with, and that with the addition of player characters' issues that would be soon made up by the players, that all of the dramatic content necessary was there. So I shut it down. Good, bad, over-controlling, your call. And I just submit it to you here as a historical fact of, how we did this game. Now, what else should I talk about regarding the prep? One thing you may notice is that I didn't explain the game. I didn't say a word yet about screen presence. I didn't say a word about the way that fan mail works. I didn't explain everything. I think that's a really big deal when we're talking about introducing a role-playing game, and especially when we're talking about something like Primetime Adventures, where the procedures are going to be relatively unfamiliar going in once you contact them. The most important thing to do is simply do the pieces in order as you go and say, all right, there's going to be teachable moments as we proceed, and nothing will be gained by filling everybody full of all these different things to process, when all we really need to focus on for purposes of this moment is the aesthetics. And if you're going to be playing Primetime Adventures, I urge you to focus just on that aesthetic level at first. Last point, and actually it probably should have been the first one. Here is what I went in with, and I think it's a super big deal, which is that when you're setting up the show, if you're going to be doing it in this way that we're talking about as a group, you throw it in kind of way to do things. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? Okay, done. Let's move with that. If you're going to be doing that, then what is the aesthetic model for what we're doing? And I am going to break with what everybody was so excited about when Primetime Adventures kind of took off and became a blurb on the back of the second edition, which was all about, oh, this is the way that they should be making up TV shows, and some of the verbiage in the book about, okay, now you're in the writer's conference, the producer's table, and you're making your pitch. This is completely wrong-headed. It is the worst thing you can do, is to put yourselves in the position of professionals whose job is to please, first and foremost, their employers, and in some sort of vague and secondary half-assed way out there, an audience. And it's completely the misguided way to do it. I want you to note what I said to the people when we were playing. I said exactly the opposite. I said, this is the game, or this rather is the show, that if you don't like television, but somebody says, you got to watch this, and they ultimately strong arm you into doing it, and you say, wow, I really like this. I will watch this show. And why? Because you like that character. Because the setting and context for that character are also so just right, so good. And you're into it. And so it's not a typical show, and it's certainly not some ideal of a successful show. in any kind of mass market, mass audience, TV executive pleasing context. So keep that in mind. Note exactly what I said and how it jumped in. Now, in the show you're about to watch, which is the pilot, there are a few interesting points. We don't have a title. That comes later. And also, as I kept emphasizing, everything's a little bit provisional. I don't know if you've seen any bona fide pilots from the past. These days, I think pilots are better understood just as episode 1. But in the past, pilots were usually pretty junky. They had a lot less budget, and the characters are still provisional. A character will disappear out of the pilot and be replaced by someone else for episode 1. There will often be a lot of sort of experimental dialogue. We're going to make this guy a funny guy. And you'll be watching the pilot on DVD or something, and you'll say, wait a minute, wow. Bob was a funny guy. I mean, Bob's like the most intense, tormented character in the show. And I guess in the pilot, they wrote him as the funny guy. Whatever, it didn't work out. Or whoever was in charge of getting it going in the processing after the pilot, whoever was influencing that, Bob's actor to a different writer to the producer's, intimate partner or whoever, but something happened and they did Bob differently after that. And thank God they did. So keep in mind that you will be seeing a processing step after the pilot, which I set up for us to do. You can say, I don't really like that issue that I chose. I'm going to do a different issue. Or you might say, the contacts seem a little repetitive to me, or I'm not feeling that particular trait, the way I thought I might. So I'm going to change that. All of those are totally okay. So I hope you'll see that I set up for that. Anyway, enjoy the pilot. And I hope this was a useful learning moment for thinking about the game.